Back in my Wrestlers and Fighting Games video, I said I'd eventually cover sumo wrestlers and fighting games with their unique fighting style, and with the various requests I've received for this topic, I think it's time to do that. Sumo wrestling doesn't seem like it could work in a standard fighting game since it's usually meant for close quarters with a small ring. However, game developers find a way to make the sumo style work in a more open arena. No major criteria for this list. The fighting game characters involved simply have to use the sumo fighting style. While sumo wrestlers have a standard appearance, not every character on this list follows the physical sumo norm of being an overweight man in a loincloth. So get in the ring for the top 10 sumo wrestlers in fighting games. Number 10, Akatsuki Maru from Bariki 1. This game takes place in the whole King of Fighters universe, mostly evident because the roster contains an Art of Fighting character bearing another Art of Fighting character's name. SNK never acknowledges this game anymore, so Akatsuki remains obscure. It doesn't help that he lacks a personality or any flair in his attacks. When he wins arcade mode, his ending is just him thanking his coach and seeming kind of confused about publicity. Oh, I won? I guess I thank my coach, my family, that salad I ate earlier. His moves are basic for a sumo wrestler, with grappling and pushing, but this is actually the perfect fighting game for a sumo wrestler. The goal of these matches is to ring out your opponent in a small 3D plane arena, as opposed to the more open arenas we see from other fighting games that focus on health bars. It emulates sumo wrestling's close quarters arenas that are conducive to ring outs, so Akatsuki can show these other fighters what sumo can do at its max potential. Number 9, Su Hao from Mortal Kombat. Su Hao is arguably the worst character in the series, not exactly because the fans hate him, but because the creators do, and they never give him a likable trait, except maybe that chest laser. The creators said he would have just stayed dead after Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, but since Mortal Kombat Armageddon was the big finale with every character on the roster, he was begrudgingly revived, and with new life came a new fighting style, sumo wrestling. I'm not sure why this change was made. In Deadly Alliance, his two fighting styles were traditional wrestling and Shuai Chiao. I probably mispronounced that. While the traditional wrestling style was given to the character Meat, I'm not sure why his Shuai Chiao style was ditched for sumo. And it wasn't because he needed to replace wrestling in his moveset, since characters now only had one hand-to-hand combat style in Armageddon as opposed to the two in Deadly Alliance. Sumo was previously used by a more fitting character in Mortal Kombat Deception, but he'll be later on this list, so I'll get to that eventually. Nothing too compelling about the way Su Hao uses sumo, since it was just a copy-paste style from a different character, and Su Hao added no major differentiation to make it his own style. However, I'll give him credit that his appearance and bulk don't follow that of a normal sumo wrestler. I mean, how many sumo wrestlers have chest lasers? Not many. Number 8, Rikishiman from Kinnikuman Muscle Grand Prix. For a series that has so much over-the-top fighting, Rikishiman is pretty down-to-earth in this game. His moves follow traditional sumo skills that we'll see from all entries on this list, but there's nothing too flashy about them. My favorite attacks from him are probably his throws, since you feel the power with all the ways he can slam you into the ground. His super move is a full-on beatdown with his hand slap, so I approve of that too. While his moveset is not particularly unique for a fighting game sumo, he at least knows when to bring the hype with some moves. Number 7, Sumo Santa from Clay Fighters. Clay Fighters has no real theme, it's just a bunch of random claymation characters with no connecting stories beating the clay out of each other. However, Sumo Santa's addition in Clay Fighter 63 1/3 expanded the minuscule lore by giving Bad Mr. Frosty, the main character, a direct rival, making this game feel like a battle to save Christmas. And Santa's the villain, since Sumo Santa is Santa Claus's evil twin brother. This game is silly. A lot of his attacks involve him slapping or launching directly with his belly. When performing these attacks, his voice is perfect, provided by Jim Cummings, who is a great deep voice for a Santa Claus and large gruff villain character at the same time. He even voiced Santa in that animated movie that Cartoon Network used to play around the holidays all the time. Did this movie feel like a fever dream to anyone else? Number 6. Bo' Rai Cho from Mortal Kombat. As mentioned in the Sue House segment, he inherited the sumo fighting style from another combatant, being Bo' Rai Cho, Liu Kang's drunken master. In his first appearance in Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, Bo' Rai Cho's two fighting styles were Drunken Fist and Mizong, but just like the contents of Bo' Rai Cho's favorite drinks, the creators wanted to add a bit of spice and change up his moves for the following game. Mizong was replaced with sumo for his base moves. I'm pretty sure the logic was, he's got the sumo physique, he should totally know sumo wrestling, and that's about it. His moves are average sumo techniques, like headbutts and shoving, and his belly bump special move is pretty fun to perform. In the end though, there's nothing remarkable compared to the full-time sumo wrestlers on this list. But let's be real, no one really picks up Bo' Rai Cho for his sumo abilities. They play him because they want to vomit and flatulate on their opponent while chugging down rice wine. Number 5. Taka Arashi from Virtua Fighter. Taka is a full-on sumo wrestler. No cartoonish moves, no tricks, his moves just follow sumo to a T. However, the most notable thing about his character is his involvement in the Virtua Fighter series as a whole. He's the only character in the franchise not to appear on the roster of a game released after his initial appearance. He was in Virtua Fighter 3 first, but didn't appear again until Virtua Fighter 5's update. Story-wise, he was so devastated by his loss in the third tournament that he briefly retired until his coach was all, "Get off your ass and win that tournament. Everyone else on the roster lost and you don't see them moping about, except Wolf, but he normally looks like that." The real-life reason was Sega allegedly had trouble integrating the sumo style into the new Virtua Fighter 4 engine. I'm not sure what made sumo harder to program than every other fighting style in the series, but at the very least, it gave Taka a distinction in the franchise beyond being the only human that doesn't wear pants. Number 4. Gon Itsurugi from Rival Schools. Gon is the brute of the roster, forcing his way through anything. He's the traditional big, slow, and dumb guy, but he's not a bad guy. He just wants to have a fun time and eat. Being a follower, he hangs out with the ruffians who just skip class and loiter. Not sure when Gon had time to learn sumo wrestling, especially since his teammates utilize less graceful street brawling tactics, but it's nice to see Gon has a hobby. Winning the game with him shows him reforming his slacking ways and trying to study for school, so good for him, except he rips the book in half out of frustration, and then his teammate Akira drops the realest fact in this entire franchise. She berates him to treat those textbooks better because of the price. Yes, anyone who's in college knows to treat the textbooks nicely because you want to sell them back for 10% of their overall cost next semester. Number 3. Hinako Shijo from King of Fighters. Hold on, I think I picked the wrong character. Here we go. Number 3. Hinako... Sorry, this is still the wrong character. Alright. Number 3, Hinako Shijo from... Is this true? She's a sumo wrestler? Okay then, Hinako is a sign that judging by appearance is overrated. She has the general physique of an anime schoolgirl, along with some of the expected interests of one. I'm not sure how big sumo wrestling is to the 13 through 17 female demographic, but it's definitely popular with the Hinako demographic. Her love of watching sumo wrestling influenced her to fight with that style, wanting to show that the sumo size is optional. After failing to start a girls-only sumo club at her school, she teamed up with the other high school girls, Athena and Malene, for an upcoming King of Fighters tournament. Her teammates were impressed with how strong of a fighter she was, and so were the players. Her techniques closely follow sumo techniques, using all parts of her body: hands, sweeps, the headbutt missile. You'd think her lack of mass would be troublesome for her fighting style, but it's actually pretty clever. Sumo wrestlers are built to fight others with their size in a fixed arena, which could be a detriment to them when transferring over to a mixed martial arts tournament. So a slim character that utilizes the fierce sumo moves could be a combination that works in one of these tournaments. It's hard to say how successful she was in proving this, since fighting games are balanced to put everyone on an even playing field, but at least I can give her points on how enthusiastic she looks when fighting. You can tell this is someone who's following her dreams. Number 2, E Honda from Street Fighter. E Honda's a character I've come to appreciate more over time, mainly because he keeps getting put down by his own franchise. He was one of the original 8 fighters in Street Fighter 2 and became the least developed of the group. Over time, the other 7 had their stories evolved and saw more exposure in other games, and then you just had E Honda, whose only characterization is that he likes sumo wrestling and likes to eat. Street Fighter tacked him onto the Alpha 3 roster, with his story still being, hey, I defeated Bison, now let's learn to sumo wrestle. The Alpha comic by Udon showed E Honda humiliated in front of his biggest fan Sakura, followed by her finding a new fighter to root for. Vega was pursuing all the Street Fighters and dropped his picture of Ryu when beating down Honda, so Sakura picks it up and is like, this guy seems better. Later, Honda! Honda returned in Street Fighter 4, which was a given since it was a series revival and Capcom wanted to bring back the original Street Fighter 2 roster to celebrate. However, Honda was still the same, sumo and food, summarized with his rival fight. His rival is the Chef El Fuerte because Honda wants him to cook Chanko stew for him, which is a traditional sumo meal to help them pack on healthy weight. El Fuerte's reaction to all of this is, okay? His whole motivation here is to get sumo food, though his story did get some nice development when Hakan was introduced, but it was still all about sumo for that plotline. Finally, in Street Fighter V, he appears in Alex's prologue story, when Fong is having Alex fight a bunch of illusions that start off as joke or comedic characters from the series. Merely one level above the ultimate joke character Dan Hibiki is E Honda surfing on Hakan. And how much respect does he get? He gets knocked out in one hit even when combining his power with the Turkish oil wrestler. Even though Honda's not the most interesting character, I feel bad for him because he lost his biggest fan and is now just considered one level above Dan by his own franchise. So Capcom, one day let's restore the glory to this sumo wrestler, at least make his personality like the Street Fighter anime movie. In that, he was hospitable and hanging out with Ryu, he seemed like a chill guy. E Honda has the iconic factor going for him, but number 1 beats him out since he ultimately has more character traits than just eating in sumo, and he seems like the other recognizable sumo in fighting games. Number 1, Ganryu from Tekken. Ganryu combines what there is to like about the standard sumo moveset and E Honda's more simplistic moveset. He can stay realistic and then transition into more cartoonish attacks. He started off as a Jack clone in the first Tekken game, but fleshed out into a legitimate sumo over time. Sure, it took until Tekken 5 until he finally got to that point, but at least he was around in the story beforehand. He was the youngest sumo wrestler to reach the sport's highest ranking Yokozuna, but was kicked out of the league for his gambling problem. With his great fighting skills and now being a free agent, he decided to enter the King of the Iron Fist tournament, and lost. However, there was a silver lining, as his abilities were noticed by a legitimate businessman. This guy. Kazuya hired Ganryu to steal a valuable amulet from Michelle Chang. He may have not come back with the amulet, but he returned in love, and rejected. This caused him to reevaluate his life and abandon the whole evil crime syndicate thing. During the 20-year time skip between Tekken 2 and 3, he retired to Hawaii, opened a sumo stable, and enjoyed the sunlight, until he fell in love again with Michelle's 20-year-old adopted daughter, Julia. Now he enters the fight again, with the goal to impress her and obtain the data Julia needs for her research. He finds success with the latter, stores the data card in his sumo belt, and meets up with Julia to give it to her. She never asked him why it smelled so dank, but she probably thought it. Either way, she takes it as a kindly sumo wrestler simply helping her out with her environmental research and runs off before Ganryu can say anything about how he's in love. And then he's just hanging around in Tekken 6. The franchise doesn't really know what to do with him anymore, especially with the creator Harada basically confirming Ganryu is the least popular character. Maybe it was meant to be fan service when he got arrested in his own Tekken Tag 2 arcade mode ending. Either way, I like that he got to develop his character even if it was short-lived and he was a bit of a creep when he met Julia. Combining Ganryu's personality with his sumo moveset makes him the top sumo wrestler in fighting games on this list. So, what did you think? Agree? Disagree? Was E Honda robbed? Are there any other sumos that should have gotten some extra spotlight? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.